Review: this article is more than 13 years old despite a no-perfect performance by Meryl Streep. The Margaret Thatcher biopic lacks much cutting edge. Peter Bradshaw, the 5th of January 2012, 12.30 Gem Chairpore. Margaret Thatcher. Her transformation into a biopic drag queen is now complete. Daringly. Screenwriter Abby Morgan and director Philly Lloyd have made a movie about Baroness Thatcher's flashback-riddled dementia while their subject is still alive. Britain's most important and controversial post-war prime minister has been recast, rather like Judi Dench as Iris Murdoch 10 years ago, into a bewildered old lady, cherished in dramatic terms for her poignant vulnerability and decline rather than for the mature achievements of her pomp. I like the screen Iris. She is paired off with kindly Jim Broadbent. Margaret is played with cunning and gusto by Meryl Streep, and it is a pious, critical convention to praise performances like these because they go beyond mere impersonation. I'm not entirely certain that Streep does go beyond mere impersonation, but also not certain that there is anything mere about it in any case. Technically brilliant mimicking of this standard is much rarer than Renovella good acting. Meryl Streep's Margaret is very good, though perhaps no better than Andrea Riseborough's portrayal in the BBC drama Margaret Thatcher, The Long Walk to Finchley, where Streep scores are in her studied imagining of Thatcher's old age. The deterioration, the gaze blurring, the tics and mannerisms disintegrating and disintegrating. Though like many Hollywood stars doing British accents, she can do the slow and deep registers, but not the quick cheer-up of a certain type of high-flown Englishwoman. For example, Roger Alum here plays Gordon Rees, famously instructing the callow Mrs. Thatcher on how to change her voice and make it lower. The Prime Minister's speech, if you will. But it doesn't sound all that much different afterward. Well, the Meryl Maggie is a very enjoyable and effective turn, effusively and rightly praised by all that have seen it. The critic Henry Fitzherbert recently asked me to imagine how the American press would react if some British actor liberal played the Alzheimer's-ridden Ronald Reagan while the Gipper was still alive. They might have been less positive. Margaret Thatcher is here, an elderly, lonely widow, being kept under virtual house arrest at a grand London address. She has secretaries and assistants who maintain a light schedule of appearances and photo ops. At a dinner party, she is heard to deride coalitions, yet refers affectionately to the current Prime Minister as a bit of a smoothie, a nice touch, perhaps a hint of her Cecil Parkinson infatuation. She is attended to by her harassed daughter Carol, but chiefly worries about when and whether to throw away suits belonging to her late husband. Denis, who appears to her when she is alone, a cheerful dream ghost played by Broadbent Philip to her Elizabeth, telling her to come off it and generally buck up. News of a terrorist bomb blast in South Asia triggers memories of the IRA's 1984 Brighton Grand Hotel attack, and Margaret finds herself carried back into the past, her arrival into the Commons. Becoming leader, the 1979 victory, the Falklands, the miners, strike the Ronald Reagan love in the city boom, and finally the inevitable 1990 leadership crisis with Anthony Head and Richard E. Grant playing Howe and Heseltine. Margaret Thatcher's fear of being swamped by an alien culture is very much not mentioned, and neither is her less than enthusiastic attitude to Nelson Mandela. The film missed a comic trick in omitting Margaret Thatcher's EU budget rebate victory in 1984, the most spectacular triumph over foreigners since Port Stanley. This is a defanged, declawed, depoliticized Margaret Thatcher, whom we are invited to admire on the feeble grounds that she is tougher and gutsier than the men. Yet on the rare occasions when the film does allow her to become nastily political, this Margaret comes alive. At the dinner party, she is asked for her opinion on the current terrorist attacks. After pausing long enough to let the guests squirm with embarrassment, she swims back into focus with a potently non-P. C. Speech about how evil has never been more patient or more avid, and that Western civilization must keep up the battle. No balanced pieties about freedom and democracy, just a cool insistence on evil on the one hand, and Western civilization on the other. Later, one of the Tory guests, played by Amanda Root, literally kneels before the seated Margaret to say how much she admires her, and a droll Mrs. Thatcher every inch the informal stateswoman. A says that nowadays people feel don't think. Amanda Root's character is glowing with what Alan Clark called the fur contact, the thrill of being in Mrs. Thatcher's presence. There's little actual contact in this film, too benign and celebratory, but it finds an interesting comic register in Margaret Thatcher, a note of distress and self-pity, loneliness and anxiety. Meryl Streep has done more for her than any spin doctor.